Hello. The bells are tolling, and so Timothy L. Belfry is here to deliver. Today we're going to be talking about Nick Cole's Strange Company, and it's quite a wild ride. It is everything from tragedy to comedy to just about everything kind of hokey about sci-fi is recontextualized and made honestly into some of the best sci-fi I've read in a long time. It's fantastic. In order to explain why I like this book, I'll just go over a basic plot summary to give you an idea of what it is. So, what it is a tragedy about a company of mercenaries who were previously great and have since fallen off dramatically, especially in the last few hundred years. This book takes place in the far future where space travel is a thing, and what the Strange Company does is the jobs that nobody else wants to do. They have a lot of renegade soldiers and people who practice magic and voodoo and mess with technology that they probably shouldn't be. And so they're a ragtag group of weirdos who have somehow survived as long as they have. And honestly, I love it. It's a fantastic idea for a story, and watching them kind of fall apart as the story goes on is honestly an incredible ride. Now, the story has a lot of obviously dark moments because they are a mercenary company, and so there's definitely a lot of like graphic violence and a lot of commentary on what this kind of life would be like. But there's also a lot of comedy elements, so I definitely say it's more of a dark comedy than anything else. There's a lot of ridiculous things that happens. Slight spoiler, but there's even hokey sci-fi elements like a group of gorillas, cybernetically enhanced, genetically enhanced gorillas that are one of the antagonists in the story. It's great. I love the mixing of things that you would consider hokey and things that were probably taken from like 50s and 60s sci-fi that wouldn't or didn't work but are now being reworked into something that's fun and honestly fantastic. And that's not to say that there isn't stuff to be taken seriously either. People who want a book that's comedic will get that. People who want a book that's more serious will also get what they want. And people who want to explore a sci-fi world will also get what they want as well, because there's a lot of history behind the company and the universe as a whole in this book series, because there's a second one coming out pretty soon. And honestly, it's great. What I like so much about Strange Company is that the protagonist nor anyone in the Strange Company are very good people. They're all generally people who have either fucked up or just had something horrible happen to them, and they really don't ever get over it. And so instead of tackling their problems, they join up with a mercenary company where they usually end up getting killed. And I think me and most people like flawed characters, and this story is full of ton of them. And now they're not malicious per se. I mean, I don't like reading stories about very specifically bad people, but they also don't quite fit into the role of like a hero, nor does anyone in the company do, including the main character. They're all just people who are trying to forget their past and either live or die gloriously in a military company that's long since overstayed its welcome. And I think that's a really intriguing way to go about exploring a sci fi world. Also, what I really like about this book as well is the mix of magic and sci fi elements. I like the idea of warlocks, witches, and shamans having a place within a universe full of cybernetically enhanced or genetically enhanced humans. It actually comes off a slightly like Shadowrun would if it was set in space rather than on Earth. And, well, I say that, but Strange Company doesn't have like elves and dwarves and orcs and stuff. They mostly keep it human, but it's generally the same idea where it's slightly absurdist, but still tries to keep itself at least relatively serious, and it works out great. One of my favorite characters in particular is an old man called Stink Eye, who, based on context clues that the story gives you, it doesn't outright say it, which is also great, is that he is a man from old Earth, Asia, and from what you gather from his past and the weird things that he says, he was an anti-communist Chinese man who eventually got off Earth and practiced magic, and over the years saw strange and horrible things, so much so that it kind of drove him insane. And so what he does throughout the story is act both as like Gandalf, but is also an idiot who just says things that are completely meaningless and sometimes things that aren't. And so the company is constantly questioning why he's there, but when they see his magic, they're like, oh, right, that's why he's there. Yeah, he can kill a bunch of people within like a couple minutes, and it's like, oh, okay. But so he's essentially the group's mascot, where he's kind of insane and he's also ultra competent. So he's a representation of survival despite everything that's wrong with them. And they literally say that if he dies, then this company dies, because he's a representation of exactly what the company is, which is it overstayed its welcome a very long time ago. It's no longer glorious, and they all just do odd jobs that shouldn't be worth their time, but are now because they just don't have any money and all their equipment is junk. And so they're trying to get back into their original place, but that isn't going to happen. And despite this new contract that they've recently acquired from Rebel Monarch, it definitely is going to happen now, because that's going to end horribly as well. And so that's what the story is about. It's about a thing trying to reclaim old glory, but ends up failing miserably, and everybody pays the consequences for it. Also, the prose in this book is really good as well. The flow of the story is very solid. It goes from place to place without ever feeling clunky at all. The point of view of the story is from the log keeper who keeps information about the company, and there had been about 18 before him, and he apparently, at least from his point of view, thinks he's going to be the last because of how screwed up everything's gotten since he started. And just everything about how the story is written, to the tone of it, really quite grips you. And I think the only thing I could say that might be a bit negative about the story is the fact that it only takes place on one planet. I mean, obviously the story is about trying to salvage a failed mission, but I feel like limiting it to one planet kind of takes away a bit from the sci-fi element, where it's not focusing on like space travel and stuff like that. It's more focused on a single mission, and I hope with the second book they'll broaden the horizons a little bit, which I imagine they will, because right now it just feels a bit narrow because they're on this single planet for the whole story. But yeah, so I can only imagine the second book broadening this further. So it's not really criticism. I'm just mentioning that it feels a little small in the beginning, at least. Yeah, I'd say I'd recommend this book. The characters are good. The plot is interesting. The world is interesting. Or universe, I should say, because it's sci fi. and I honestly can't recommend it enough. I mean, unless you don't like a bit of gore, because things do get a little uh, crazy, I should say, later on with all the stuff that's happening. But otherwise, it's a perfect blend of fantasy and sci-fi, and yeah, I'd highly suggest picking up a copy or listening through it on Audible. Anyway, this has been Timothy O'Belfrey. If you want to talk about it in the comments, I'd be more than happy to. And that is all. I hope you have a wonderful day, and I hope the bells toll soon so I can talk to you again. Thank you. Bye bye.